My husband pointed his sword at me. He also wished me a good reincarnation, hoping that we would meet again in our next life. Unfortunately for him, he did not get the chance to finish his final words. Before his sword could fall, my own blade had already pierced his heart. Too bad, husband. I was also planning to kill my husband to prove my Tao. I am the inheritor of the ancient ruthless path. I have cultivated in seclusion for 100 years. Today I descend into the mortal world to complete my love tribulation so that I can ascend. The first time I met my husband, my first impression of him was that he looked easy to deceive. Without any hesitation, I asked him if he wanted to be my husband. Tianming fell silent for a moment before agreeing. I told him my name was ShuangFeng. Later he told me that he was an orphan from Hai Village. As it turned out, neither of us had parents. We held a simple wedding in the small coastal village, with only a few kind-hearted villagers as our witnesses. There were no grand ceremonies, no blessings from elders, and no expensive gift, so only a humble meal and 2 cups of wine. After our marriage, we lived an ordinary life. He went out to sea to fish every morning while I stayed home to tend our small courtyard, prepare our meals, and wait for his return before sunset. Day after day, the peaceful life passed quietly, and before I realized it, 3 years had gone by. Then, on the day of our 3rd wedding anniversary, everything changed. That morning, my husband left for the sea as usual. Before leaving, he told me he would return before sunset and bring back the freshest fish for our anniversary dinner. I watched his boat disappear beyond the horizon before returning to our small courtyard. As the sun slowly sank into the sea, fishing boats began returning to the village one after another. Families gathered along the shore to welcome their loved ones home, but my husband's boat never appeared. Not long afterward, several villagers rushed toward my house with anxious expressions. They told me that a violent storm had suddenly formed in the open sea. Many fishing boats had barely escaped, but my husband's boat had vanished into the towering waves. Without wasting another moment, I followed them to the shore. Dark clouds covered the sky, and the roaring sea swallowed every trace of his boat. The villagers searched throughout the night, but they found nothing except a broken wooden oar drifting among the waves. 3 days later, everyone in Hai Village accepted that he had died at sea. Only I refused to believe it, not because I was unable to accept death. As a cultivator who walked the ruthless path, I had seen countless people fall before my eyes. Death was nothing unfamiliar to me. My love tribulation had not ended. I came here to experience love, to understand the attachment that countless ruthless cultivators feared. If my husband truly died, then this trial would have ended before I reached the answer I sought. And I refused to accept such an incomplete result. Besides, finding another husband was not something I intended to do. I had chosen one person for this tribulation. Replacing him with another mortal would only waste my time. So while the villagers mourned for Su Tianming, I continued my daily life as if nothing had changed. I still prepared 2 bowls of food for dinner and left a cup of tea on the wooden table. Until the tribulation was complete, Su Tianming was still my husband. On the 7th day, my husband, who was supposed to be dead, came back like a different person. He was standing in the yard looking at me with cold yet complicated eyes. At that moment, I knew the man in front of me was no longer the husband I had lived with for 3 years. I sensed a strong aura of spiritual power from a tribulation realm expert, whose strength was only slightly lower than mine. He said ShuangFeng. Hearing my name from his lips felt strangely unfamiliar. The gentle fisherman who used to smile at me beneath the old tree in Hai Village was gone. For 3 years I had shared a mortal life with him, but now those 3 years felt like a distant dream. Su Tianming looked at me with complicated emotions. He said that he had regained his memories and that, for the sake of his Tao, he needed to kill his wife to prove his path. I asked him what he meant. He raised his sword and said, "ShuangFeng, I'm sorry. I hope you have a good reincarnation and that we meet again in our next life." He wanted to stab the sword into my heart, but he seemed unable to do so. His hand trembled. I walked slowly, straight into his sword. He panicked and withdrew it, but at that very moment my sword appeared out of nowhere and pierced through his heart. "Too bad, husband." I was also planning to kill my husband to prove my Tao. I pulled out my sword and watched as ShuangFeng lay on the ground. His eyes were filled with disbelief as he had never imagined that I was also a cultivator. After I struck him with my sword, my spiritual power surged, revealing my true strength. He seemed even more shocked when he realized that I was also a ruthless path cultivator. He seemed unwilling to accept this ending. There was hesitation in his eyes, mixed with a trace of sadness and reluctance. In the end, ShuangFeng died. I waited for my spiritual power to surge and for my ascension tribulation to descend, but nothing happened. The sky remained completely calm. I was stunned for a moment. I waited for a long time, still expecting my ascension tribulation to descend, but nothing happened. Only then did I realize I had failed my tribulation. I buried ShuangFeng in a garden filled with beautiful flowers and built a beautiful grave for him. After all, he was my husband. Although he could not help me complete my ascension, I still gave him the respect he deserved. Afterward, I returned to my cave abode to regulate my cultivation. Even though my tribulation had failed and my ascension remained out of reach, my cultivation had loosened slightly. An ancient divine palace floated beyond the 9 heavens, its towering halls stretching into the boundless sky. Inside the hall was vast and magnificent, built from celestial jade and ancient divine stones. There sat a man within the ancient divine palace, his tall figure radiating unmatched majesty. His long black hair flowed behind him, and his divine robes carried the brilliance of the heavens. With a flawless appearance, profound eyes, and an aura that surpassed countless immortals. He opened his eyes. For a moment, they were still filled with sadness, the feeling he had never experienced throughout his millennia of life. ShuangFeng? I failed my tribulation? For countless millennia, he had existed without emotions. He had never known sadness or unwillingness. But now, for the first time, he finally tasted those unfamiliar feelings. This time, I will not fail. He slowly closed his eyes and entered reincarnation once again.
Why do you think ShuangFeng failed her tribulation? Share your theory in the comments below. Thank you for watching. This is only the beginning of the story. Stay tuned for the next chapter.